Hey, hi everybody. My name is Jerry Wise, and we'll have some people joining us this evening on the live broadcast. I want to welcome the Facebook viewers it's on live on Facebook. If you'd like to watch on YouTube, you could go to my channel at jerrywiserelationshipsystems.com or Jerry Wise Relationship Systems on YouTube and click the live button. And also, if you're on YouTube, you can always go to Facebook and watch this live. So we're live on both Facebook and YouTube this evening. And I would like you to kind of hold off on your questions for a bit. We're going to be answering questions tonight. And we're going to have some people joining us here. There are a few things I'd like to say. My business people say I have to say these things, so I'm gonna go ahead and get the business things out of the way. And let me switch glasses here. We have an interesting topic tonight. It is entitled Reducing Your Reactivity and also using circuit breakers in relationships to help reduce that reactivity. And we're going to be here tonight for an hour or maybe an hour and a half. It depends on how, if I run down or not or get too tired. I'm just an old man. So I'm going to try to keep things going this evening so that we can answer some questions. I'd like to talk about just a few things before we get into the material. And I apologize, but I want to talk about these things that are coming up. I've got a workshop that I'm going to be doing on August the 1st on Saturday, I believe at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, New York City time, and it will be for 2 hours or more. I might go longer if I feel up to it, and if we're having a good time, I like to sometimes continue that good time. And that again is August 1st, Saturday at 4 p.m. We'll be sending out information for people to sign up. If you go to the website, you can add your email address and you'll get those notifications. There are a couple of series that I'm going to start doing also for folks. And there have been people who've asked about topics that they'd like to hear about. And one of the series is a Christian series on Christianity and codependency, Christianity and self-differentiation. A lot of people have asked me about those topics, and since that's been an experience of mine in the past, that and having been a pastor in the past, I thought I could share some of those things. Also, if you notice, at least on YouTube, not on Facebook, but on YouTube, there is a donate button. And if you'd like to donate to this particular channel and donate to me so that I can do more videos, I've given 140 videos for free to folks, put in a lot of work in them, and I'm putting up new videos, sometimes 2, maybe 3 a week for folks. And they've said they've really benefited from it. And, you know, there's a donate button. If you could donate something that would really help. It takes hours to make these videos, and it takes thought, and it takes time and energy to record them. And that's all time out of my life to do that. I do want to give this material. It is very important. But, you know, I've gotten to the place where I think I can ask people to help with that and with those costs. And so if you want to push the donate button on YouTube, that would certainly be great. Whether it's $1 or $2,500, whatever you want to spend would be really grateful. And we would use that for getting this material out to you and to others. I also, as a way to help recoup some costs, we've got some clothing that you'll see down below. There's a clothing line that we've been working on. We have more designs that we want to use, and it's called the Be Wise Collection, and they're pretty nice. And those designs are ours. We will be having more as well. I hope you'll join also a YouTube membership that doesn't cost very much. You know, a couple dollars. There's three different levels of memberships. You can just press join on YouTube and you're a member and you get to watch the exclusive content, additional videos I've made, several of them that no one's seen but exclusive members. Exclusive members on my website and exclusive members on YouTube. And for just a couple of dollars, you can watch all that exclusive content. I've already put one up for free on a series of on codependency and the stages of codependency recovery, and I'll put those other two stages up on exclusive content. I also wanted to mention that we have a team of folks that are working with me and work with other clients to help them expand their ministry, their business, the message that they have using websites, YouTube, Instagram, all the social media, and they are excellent at what they do. And I actually think very cost effective. So if you're interested, let us know. Also, we have some spots open if people would like to be sponsors for my podcasts. We have some spots available for people if they'd like me to advertise their business or their concerns that they have that they'd like people to know about. Just contact us and we will do that. Let me see if there's anything else. And every time I do a live now on my YouTube page, we will have an opportunity to allow you to donate something. I just think it's important that we give to those who are working hard to try to help us. I've done that all my life. I've been supportive and given to people, and I give a lot of money away to other people who have needs or who are great ministries. So I just believe in that giving principle. So I wanted to share that with you. Let's see. I think those are all the marketing things I wanted to say before we got into our material. I appreciate your patience. Again, tonight I wanted to talk about lowering your reactivity. And again, for those on Facebook, you can join me over on YouTube if you'd like. Lowering your reactivity is very important. And using circuit breakers, I'm going to talk about that just a little bit tonight too. I have someone mention where's the donate icon on YouTube. It should be up on there someplace, I hope, because we wanted to make that available to you. It's a little, do you remember what? It's a little button that looks like what? Oh, it's a dollar sign. I think it's a dollar sign button, I believe.
And you can buy the sticker.
And you can, yeah, you can, so it's a little dollar sign around there somewhere. Hi, Jerry, and thank you for doing this. Oh, great. And again, I want to give this information away. I've been giving this information away for years, and I will continue to do that. But it costs money to do that. And it costs money to be on Facebook and on YouTube and all of those kinds of things. And so I don't mind asking some people to help out, because I think you can, and especially people who've told me they've watched all 140 of my videos. That's quite a gift to give someone, because if I were working with you individually, that would probably cost much more. And again, someone mentioned if you press live chat, you will see it. Right, if you press live chat, you'll see it in the lower right-hand corner, the donate button. And if you enjoy what I do, if it's helpful to you, tell me that. And you can tell me that by your donation. So let's get into the material. We're going to be asking you to ask questions also this evening. And any questions that you have for me, I would put question in a capital letters so we can see the question that you want to ask, and then write a short question after that. Again, it's one of the things that we don't want to have too long a question, because it then takes an awful lot of time to read the question, and if it's too complicated, then you might want to just work with me or one of my staff. If you're having those kind of complicated questions, you can set up a time with, I've got a couple of people, Nancy and Yitz, who are trained associates of mine. Yitz is in Israel. Yitz Goldberg, Nancy Eisenman is in Indianapolis, and they would be happy to work with you. So, if you have questions, write question, and then we'll see if we can do some answering of some of those. So circuit breakers, how do we, or reducing reactivity, how do we reduce that reactivity? And I think that's a very important topic. And people are always asking me because they want to be less reactive, and they want to be able to not be as triggered and those kinds of things. And really, I think the work of self-differentiation and the work of family systems is a work in which we do want to reduce our reactivity, to reduce our or we want to use circuit breakers to reduce that reactivity. The reason I use circuit breaker, because an emotional field is all connected with electronic, we're all wired together. We're all wired together, and we want to break those circuits when the anxiety or the tension gets so high, because that anxiety fuses us in relationships, and we want to break that anxiety so we're more detached. And I'm not talking about just being more distant. Certainly with malignant narcissists and those kinds of folks, we need a lot of distance with them, and in that way, a cutoff might be inappropriate, and no contact for malignant narcissists, etc. But sometimes we have parents or family who are narcissistic traits. We want to continue to be in the family. We don't want to reject the whole family. And so we can learn how to reduce our reactivity, which also teaches us and helps us to be less damaged by anything they do. And that's something I think is very important. I don't want to be affected by what other people are doing so much. And if we're affected, and we take things personally, and we get all upset, and we get angry, then we end up making the situation worse and the relationship worse. And then actually we get all knotted in together even more when we have that high anxiety. So, let me talk about some of the ways in which we can reduce our reactivity. And circuit breakers are the things we do to not be reactive. And there are lots of those. I've shared those in some of my videos. I have some newer things that I would share tonight, but it might help you to think about that more. I think just like, for example, I remember doing reading, just reading, and I read Murray Bowen, the psychiatrist who developed Murray Bowen, Natural Family Systems. I remember reading Peter Titleman, Harriet Lerner, and I remember reading those books, and I thought, gosh, I've just finished reading those books, and I feel more detached just reading those books. And I think that's the power of someone who's writing, who understands self-differentiation. And that's why I recommend people read Jenny Brown, Andrea Shera, and those books, Roberta Gilbert, because I want them to read And it's almost self-therapy and self-coaching just to read that and just to read those things, because you'll walk away going, whoa, that's a whole different way of looking at it. I already feel more detached. So just doing bibliotherapy can be a real help in helping you to detach. Because if you can reframe things, if you can reframe your experiences, then you can have more detachment, greater detachment, and more calmness. So that's a big one. And I would devour any book about family systems and about self-differentiation. I would devour those, because how it was changing me on the inside. And so I really recommend them. I think remembering, very importantly, that this notion, and we think about it, but I think putting it into practice and believing it, that I'm not you and you're not me. And I think that's a definition of breaking that enmeshment and that connectedness over enmeshment that we have with folks. I'm not them, they're not me. And always remember that when you're in relationships. And I'm not going to be you, and you're not going to be me. And is that okay? And for many of us, if we've come from dysfunctional families, it's not okay. It doesn't feel okay. Those rules would be, I'm going to change me by trying to change you. That's a more consistent rule that we have. And that rule doesn't work very well. You probably already found that out. And if you haven't found that out, you probably will. Because changing others to change you just doesn't work. But changing me, accepting me, allowing them to be them, accepting them, is the best way to interact with other people. Even people who are not so nice. Even people who are not so nice. Oh, Patty, you're just too complimentary. She was a support to me when I shifted over my videos, and she was a big help to get all my videos in one place while I was making a transition. And people have been a big support to me, and I want to thank all of them who have. And again, if you're appreciative, then show that appreciation to me. Secondly, I think another way to reduce your reactivity is to slow down. I tell ACOAs to slow down. I tell adult children of narcissists to slow down. I tell almost everyone to slow down, because we will often get ahead of ourselves in relationships and interacting with them, and this creates an awful lot of anxiety. If you slow down the interaction, slow down the pace, slow down how you interact, do some planning, do some strategizing, you really can reduce your reactivity. And so I think that's very important. If you can just learn to slow down. Slow down the interaction with your husband or your spouse. Slow down your interaction with your parents and yourself. Oftentimes we'll get ahead of ourselves, we'll be tripping over ourselves, then we have more anxiety, then they're pinged, I'm pinged, and we just keep going. For example, I think about slowing down. If I'm starting to feel some fear of abandonment, or if I'm starting to feel abandonment, whenever I start to feel reactive, I always know, Jerry, you're going too fast. You must slow down the pace. You're going too fast. Or if you feel rejection, or if you feel a great amount of guilt or shame, right when you start feeling those feelings and having those reactions, and then many of those feelings are often, as we've talked about, systems feelings versus true feelings. We truly experience them, but they come from the system. They come from all the wiring that we're all connected with. And so we want to slow down when that happens. And so many times, a lot of folks, and I did too, and all of these things I've done myself. And all of those things, when I've gotten reactive, I then tend to speed up. And then it just becomes a snowball rolling down the hill, getting bigger and bigger and bigger. If you start to get into an argument, you start to get reactive, stop. Just stop. You don't have to resolve it all this second. It does. Most times it's not an urgent thing. It can be talked about later. I first want to do no harm to myself or to them. And so I need to stop and go, hold on, we might need to talk about this later. Or, I'm feeling uncomfortable right now. Let's pick this up at a later time, mom or dad, siblings, husband, wife, even adult kids, whatever. Hey, I need to slow down. And I'll get back with you, so that you can use your thinking process to sort through what's going on, also your self-awareness process. And as I've mentioned in a more recent video, we want to be self-aware, self-defined, and self-regulated. That's a part of the work of self-differentiation. And that self-regulation means I'm able to slow down or stop. I need to go, hold on. I need to go pray. I need to go think about this. I need to go read something. I need to work on my detachment. I need to meditate. All those things that you can hear on other videos that are good for getting focused on yourself. And also, when we are reactive, when we become reactive, guess what? We're not working on ourselves when we get reactive. We've gone beyond ourselves. We've separated from ourselves when we've gotten reactive. And I want to get back to myself before I do that interaction with other folks. Again, if any of you have a question that you'd like to write, you can write question and ask a question. I don't have a lot of material tonight, but I can talk all evening, unfortunately. And because these are things I've been thinking about and working on for 40 years. And I want to share some of those things with you. Reducing reactivity, start to become aware of the anxiety you take into the relationship. Start to become aware of that anxiety. And as you become aware of that anxiety, we need to take our own temperature before we go interact with folks, or difficult folks, or difficult people, or problem relationships. We need to take our own temperature, because we're going to have to manage that anxiety. We're going to have to manage that. We can't force that management on them to, they just, in other words, I come to a relationship, I'm feeling anxious and reactive. Well, I hope they stay calm to manage my anxiety. Well, many times people don't, and if we come with anxiety, we're already going to be pinging other folks. And I think in lowering that anxiety or slowing the process down, we can even slow down the structure of it. I don't have to do the conversation today. I don't have to resolve that right now. That's even slowing it down. Also, and reducing reactivity, practice relational, as I've mentioned, relational calmness. That our anxiety does trigger reactivity, and reactivity is contagious just as calmness is contagious. And so we want to keep that anxiety down, and that's very important, because we want to practice that relational calmness and preparing ourselves for those kind of relational interactions. Some of the preparation can be in journaling, letter writing, dealing with old feelings, reading books and reading good authors on staying yourself, and also reading books that help you bring the power back to you, about you, rather than giving your power away when you go. And reactivity is a part of that, where we give our power away. Once we're reactive, guess where the power goes? Away from me. And so we want to hold on to our power and hold on to our sense of self as we interact with other folks and in our relationships. Let me take a quick drink here. Another thing that I've shared in the past, and we've talked about the tennis net or the tennis court, staying on your side of the tennis court, not on their side of the tennis court, and having the net in between. And that's kind of an illustration for self-differentiation. When we that illustration of self-differentiation, in that we are connected while staying on our side of the net, and we focus on us, and we focus on what's going on within us. I did see a question on there about buttons. You know, what do you do if they know what buttons to push, and you are your buttons are being pushed? And what do we do about those buttons? Those buttons are not theirs. They're buttons that they push, but the buttons that we have to resolve. And in fact, I work with folks every day to help them understand their buttons. Why is that button pushed? Well, what's important about that button? For example, if I remember a button, it's a little more harmless button, but I remember a good button. I remember my mom would always talk and mention something about my weight. Well, when I was more reactive, then she would make those comments, and then I would become reactive to it. Oh, there she goes again. Wish she wouldn't do that. I'm so frustrated with her doing that. And that's a button that would get pushed for me. Now, I can either try to make my mother change, which is probably going to be pretty tough, or I can try to deal with the button that is held out there that gets pushed. And that button may be, well, I need to work on my self-acceptance, confidence, self-image, and self-esteem, so that that button's not there. And then when somebody, when mom said, well, Jerry, I'm just so worried about your weight. You're just so heavy, or whatever it would be. And I'd say, well, Mom, I'll probably die young, and that's my choice. Or, this is just the weight that I want to have right now. This is just the weight that I want to be. Because when I'm ready to have a different weight, I'll have a different weight. But right now, I don't. And then I also can set a boundary and go, I really don't want to talk about this. I don't know what the purpose is. It's not going to help you or help me. And by the way, Mom, us talking about it won't bring my weight down. And so I would prefer we not. Because talking about it or being poked is not going to bring it down. But if you want it to stay up, then just keep pushing that button, Mom. And I guess it'll stay up. And that's kind of a playful response to someone who's kind of over-involved, overindulging, and that sort of thing, and enmeshed. So you want to work on your buttons. What are your buttons? And when did that button first get created? Go back to the origins of that button. Go back to where you learned that button in the first place. And I think that would be something that question. I'm not. I think that would be. Oh, I'm sorry. I thought it was right there. I think that going back to the origins of the button is so helpful to find out where it started. And that may help you get better handle on it for its origination. Because oftentimes those buttons didn't just occur with the person you have right now. It may have occurred back in family of origin. It may be a part of your growing up. And those buttons may be old. They may be ancient in terms of those buttons. And so, if we're talking about, oh, well, my husband or my wife always says, you know, well, how was the meal? And they go, oh, it was okay. And then that's a button that gets pushed. Probably its origin goes back way back to being criticized and being or feeling rejected or being overly controlled or managed or those kinds of things. So we look at the origins of the buttons, and then we can maybe reduce our reactivity. And the now we're adults and we don't have to interact as we did as children. We're older adults, or we're old. Well, I'm an older adult. We're adults, and that we can do things differently now. We can parent ourselves in a different way. We can help to accept ourselves the way we are and begin to melt those buttons so that other people cannot push them as easily. And I remember having all kinds of buttons for about anything. And so when we become more immune to those, it's often because we've done work on those buttons. But don't do work on those buttons with them. You have to do work on yourself and with a coach or someone that can help you with that button. Excuse me. The another thing that I do share to reduce anxiety is becoming a researcher, becoming an investigator. In other words, set yourself outside the relationship and watch and listen and see what's going on. And that brings us to the statement to observe, don't absorb. And that's something we want to do, to get into a learner position of what's going on. I just recently had a client who had a family gathering, and she's limited how many times she will meet with her family. She's been the scapegoat. The family just doesn't think she wants to participate in the family as much as she should. And so she went recently to a family gathering, and by taking an observer or researcher role, she was so surprised at how much she saw. She was so surprised at how much she saw in her family that had she gone to her previous interactions, she didn't see any of that, because often we're blinded by the emotional field. We're just trying to protect ourselves, or trying to act right, or trying to see who's looking at me askance, or who's doing what. And actually what's happening is that we're not able to see the family in a more objective way. And so she was able to look at her family in a different way. And it really helped her to gain more detachment and more objectivity. Now, it also brought up some more pain, because she was seeing her family in a more realistic way than she had seen in a long time, which also then triggers our fantasy buttons, which is the family we've always wanted, and why are they treating me this way? And I always had hopes and dreams that we would all be one big happy family, and I'd be accepted, and everybody seems accepted but me. And actually what many times happen is those who are accepted because they toe the line. Those who aren't accepted try to be more self-differentiated, or have been a truth teller, or look up, lift the skirt of the family. And then we ended up being ostracized. at least emotionally. Some get ostracized from inheritances, from being able to come to family things. I mean, there can be a lot of ostracization, ostracizing going on. I've got a couple of questions. Someone asked, what do you do with righteous anger? Well, I think you can have righteous anger, and I think that can occur. I also want to know the limitations of my righteous anger. What is the purpose of the righteous anger? How long are you going to hold on to it? And what is its function? You know, we want to be able to deal with righteous anger. I certainly think there's very good reasons for many of us to feel angry, either from the past or what's gone on in the past or how we're being treated now. But as adults, we want to get beyond that anger and use that anger to help us understand what kind of relationship can I really have with these folks or these people, and what's realistic. And I need to process that anger, oftentimes processing it with others who are engaged with us doesn't work very well. It usually ends up with more reactivity. But processing that with someone else. But I've expressed righteous anger before, but I think that should be short-term, short-lived. And if they're not willing to hear me, or they don't accept that, or don't accept my boundaries or those kinds of things, then instead of continuing to be in the anger, I need to make some adult choices about what I'm going to do with this relationship. And that's different than just hanging on to the anger. And how do I reduce the influence of that type of anger over my life? I think resolving it, journaling about it, expressing it on paper, expressing it verbally, and then working with someone, a coach or a therapist, that will help you to resolve that righteous anger. Because here's another thing. If we have a righteous anger button, that can be a button used by other people to keep you engaged in an unhealthy pattern of relationship. So even righteous anger can be used for ill rather than for good. So we want to be careful about that righteous anger. I think true anger and appropriate anger is okay. And then I just mentioned, or I just thought, there's another way to look at it as well. That if we are angry, then one of the things we want to do is to begin to look underneath the anger. What are the feelings that I'm experiencing underneath the anger? Righteous anger often is a secondary feeling rather than a primary feeling. So what's under there that causes that righteous anger, causes that anger? Shame, fear, hurt, abandonment. What's underneath that we go to the anger part. And I know that it was very helpful for me to explore the feelings underneath the anger. That was very helpful to do. And then someone asked, well, how do I stop reactivity when I'm caught off guard? Well, you may get reactive at that point. There are times that we may be surprised by a situation in a relationship in which we get caught off guard, and then we're reactive. But what did I mention even earlier in the video, or earlier in this broadcast, which was, then we need to stop. If we get reactive, we need to stop, because anything after reactivity is probably not going to go well. It's probably not going to be a helpful thing. And so I want to stop at that point if I feel caught off guard. Or even say, I think I'm just I'm getting a little too emotional at this point, or I'm just now having too many thoughts I don't like. I think I need to slow down, or we need to talk about this later. Because we're going to be reactive for a while as we're learning to be non-reactive. That's still going to happen. And how can you take yourself off that track, that intentional track that we've always been on, so that we can change that? And also looking at anger as a secondary feeling rather than a primary feeling can be a helpful way to reduce some of that reactivity. Let me mention a couple other things, and I'll answer some more questions. Here's another way and another thing I advise for people to to reduce their anxiety. Work to be and to act your age. Act out of your adult. Even though everything inside is saying, well, act out of your reactivity or your inner child, act as an adult. What would an adult do right now? And I think that could be very helpful to think about being an adult. Me, I'm 65. What would a 65-year-old do right now? Another 65-year-old. Or I've also used in past videos talking about what would Betty do. I would think about a neighbor named Betty, who I thought was pretty healthy, pretty responsible, nice woman, whatever. I go, what would she do in this situation? And I think, what would Betty do? And begin to shift myself that way towards what Betty would do, rather than what would Jerry do if he's reactive and acting out of his inner child or reactivity. I already know what that's like, so what would Betty do? We also want to lower our reactivity by stopping complaining and stopping blaming. Because blaming and complaining only keeps our anxiety going. And I know that's true in my own life. Most of us do that. My goodness, I wouldn't be a wise Wardwell if I didn't complain or blame. Because I learned some of that growing up, and then I've also continued it as an adult. But I also know it tends to keep me more reactive when I'm blaming and complaining. And you can ask yourself the question, if I didn't complain, if I didn't blame, then what would I be doing? Or what could I do? Or what would I do? If I leave blaming and complaining off the table, what would I do with my life right now? What would I do with this decision? What would I do with this relationship? What would I do about this circumstance? Because I think that's more productive and more adult-like. Another way to reduce your anxiety is stop getting people to change. Stop trying to change other people. We get so reactive when we do that. And we often do that out of our reactivity. Stop getting other people to change. It doesn't mean your life can't affect them. I certainly hope that I can be a change to people who watch a live broadcast or watch on Facebook or listen to my videos or watch my videos. I hope that will change people. But I'm not here to make you change, and I'm not here to, that my investment in my life is only okay if you change. I hope you will change, but I'm not trying to get you to change. And many times I may offer people if they would like to change. And with my clients, it's always an offer to people if they would like to change. That's, would you like to change? Because they go, well, Jerry, you're my coach and you're supposed to make me change. No, I'm not supposed to make you change. I'm supposed to show you a path that might help you to change if you're willing to do that. But if you don't change, I'm going to keep going on with my life, doing the best that I can with my life. And so your change is not needed for my existence. And I want to get to that place of detachment, to be able to say that and believe that. You don't have to say and believe all these things perfectly. It's a beginning work that we do, and we do this work for the rest of our lives. Aisha, thank you for your compliment on the shirt. I appreciate it. And hello, Ayla. My granddaughter is watching. Thank you for watching. She says, keep up the good work. How nice of you. She's my little Ayla. Miss A. We want to reduce also surprise in relationship patterns. Be sober, be realistic. Think about your relationships in a sober and realistic way so that you're not surprised as much by what happens in the relationship and get caught off guard. Oftentimes we're caught off guard because we don't see people soberly, we don't see people realistically. We see them in the way we want to see them, or we don't see them in a balanced way. And so we can do that balancing work that can help keep our reactivity down. I want to mention again on YouTube, not on Facebook, but on YouTube there is a donation button if you'd like to support the videos and the work that I do. It would be greatly appreciated. I appreciate that. Let's take a look at one question was, my dad is trying to get closer to me, but he still acts bullying and condescending, unwilling to be humble and recognize his mistakes. First of all, do you need your dad to recognize his mistakes and to be humble? If you need him to do it, then he's going to be triggering you an awful lot because he doesn't seem willing to change or to recognize himself. You have a father who's not very self-reflective. And if he is bullying and condescending, then you may want to change your relationship with him or the frequency of your contact and those kinds of things. Your life cannot be dependent on his willingness to recognize his mistakes or to be humble. Because if my okayness is based on those, I'm going to be in a lot of trouble about those. What if your teenage daughter hears her dad act annoying towards me or treat me like a child and I don't react and I let it slide? What will she think if I don't show I reject the treatment? Well, one of the things is, yes, you are modeling things for children. We're always modeling things. But neutrality and detachment doesn't mean I'm okay with certain behaviors. Also, I can have a relationship with my teenage daughter or with my child, and that I can communicate to them that this is not okay. But my marriage is between him and me. Now, if you're not going to leave her dad, or if you're not, I don't know if you guys are still married, or I don't know what is going on there, and that's why with some questions there's some other details that would be helpful. But I did say short questions, so I have to kind of go with what I see. That if you can also have a relationship with your daughter in which that is not okay. Then if she says, I don't know whether she talks to you about it. Certainly I don't like letting things slide, but there are many things I let slide every day. And that's okay. I can still talk to my daughter about what should slide and what shouldn't slide, or why we would let things slide. For me, I can be detached and let someone say something to me and it doesn't impact me. And I'm not going to let it impact me. And they say, well, why do you put up with that? And I go, put up with what? I don't put up with it because I don't deal with it. That's their craziness. I'm not putting up with it. I don't care about it. Now, you're right. It's a little more complicated when you have a family dynamic and you're trying to raise children with that dynamic. How do I start talking healthily or talking healthy initiatives towards others? I can analyze others on an intellectual level really well and be detached from them, but emotionally I feel too fragile to interact. Okay, well then, so you have a lot of the dynamics that you have seen, and you've had a lot of things that you are aware of. If you are too fragile to interact with them, then you have to deal with your own fragility first. And where did our fragility come from? What is that fragility about? And beginning to heal and recover from that fragility. And I think there are even some good books, that even talk about how you can work on that more. Self-care, self-love, self-attention, you nurturing yourself. Inner bonding by Margaret Paul, for example, is another example. Another ways we can begin to deal with that fragility. And I think this is another comment someone meant. So instead of blaming and complaining, we could just calmly ask questions or inquire. Exactly. And that's what Betty would do. That's what, or I'll think about if my doctor, what would my doctor do in this situation? Trying to think of someone that might have some maturity or some, sense of professionalism or whatever. Some people have asked us, well, what would Jerry do in this situation? And they might inquire or ask questions rather than blaming and complaining. Let me get a drink of water here, or a drink here. Uh-oh, I have Joy to the World cup. Not very seasonal, but it's one of my favorite cups. Let me make a few more comments here about reducing. Another way to reduce your anxiety is to give up your fantasies. Do some work on your fantasies and what you hope or believe would happen, or the way others need to be for you to be okay. Because we often grow up with a lot of fantasies and childhood fantasies. And those can really get in our way, because whenever your fantasy is not met, you're more likely to be reactive. So if we can reduce those fantasies, then we are likely to be less reactive. And I think that can be a real helpful thing to do, is work on your fantasies. Your unrealistic, not healthy adult wants or desires, but I'm talking about fantasies like, I want to have the Norman Rockwell family. And why isn't this happening? That's an unrealistic fantasy. And it's not needed for my emotional, personal sense of existence or well-being. It isn't required. And who is the other? Andrea Schara, Schara. And so give up your fantasies. The fantasy about your spouse, who's going to be the spouse you always wanted, the children you always wanted, all those kinds of things that are fantasies that get in our way and cause us reactivity. I also like to stay less reactive by doing the referral. And this is kind of a way of thinking of doing the referral. Um, when we're interacting with other folks, that we realize or that we not take on their problems, and we do the referral, because once we start taking on their problems, we're more likely to be reactive. And I want to thank those who have donated tonight. I appreciate that. I hope you will continue to donate for these videos and this information so that I can continue to bring it to you. So do the referral, such as asking them to get help for that problem in an appropriate way, and that we not take on their problems. Many times we take on those problems when we don't refer them to where they could actually get help. It would be similar to, and I'll use a graphic or more technicolor example. Someone is cocaine addicted, and they come and talk to you all the time about how all the problems are and what's going on with them. You're going to be burdened down and stressed with a problem that's beyond you. You care about this person, but they're not getting the help that they need by coming and dumping it on you. And so we need to say, hey, that must be really horrible. I understand that. When are you going to talk to somebody who can really help you with that? Maybe you need to talk to a coach or a therapist about that problem. Maybe you need to go check with family services or someone that you could get counseling for, or go to a chemical dependency treatment center and get some outpatient help on a sliding scale for this problem, rather than me just taking it on. The other way we do a referral is when someone wants to draw me into a triangle. Well, I need to talk to you about my friend Betty and how awful she is, and you know Betty, Jerry, and you know how she is. Well, I think I need to refer you to Betty, because you and I are not going to get that resolved. I understand your pain, I understand your difficulty, and if you want to listen to your friend talk about Betty, you can. If you can remain neutral and just to be of comfort, I'm so sorry you're having that trouble with her. And so I want to refer that person back to the person that they have the issue with. That will be very important for us to do that. Let me take a look here. And I want to mention also again, I've got a workshop coming up on August 1st on Saturday at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for 2 hours. There'll be training and teaching, and then we'll also have role plays that we did. Those of you who joined us for the last 4-hour workshop got to see some role plays that really benefited a lot of people. And I'd like to do more role plays with the people who would join the workshop. So I've provided a little more time to do that. I think another way of reducing your anxiety or reactivity. Let me make sure I don't get the questions lost here. Okay, yeah, good. I've got the questions you've sent in here. Another way we can help reduce our anxiety is to be willing to paradoxically accept what they say and what they believe, but leave it on their side of the tennis net. Settle for being whatever they think you are or whoever they think you are. You know what, Jerry, I just think you're a narcissist. Okay, then I'm a narcissist. By that paradoxical acceptance, I'm keeping them on their side of the net and keeping me on my side of the net. It doesn't mean I believe that I'm a narcissist. I'm just accepting their belief about it. And that's a little bit of a reversal, and I'm going to be doing a video on reversals as well. It changes the polarity of the relationship. I'm leaving their beliefs on their side of the tennis net. Well, Jerry, you just never say kind things to me. You're always mean to me. I'm sorry. I guess I'm just mean and uncaring. I'm going to leave their beliefs on their side of it, paradoxically accept it, and it's for me to be detached. It's not for me to manipulate or control them. It's for me to be more detached. It's for my benefit. So I'm not trying to, and in fact, I think I was going to say more about that tonight. I will. I'm going to talk about that. And remember, to reduce anxiety, you want to look at the relationship issues and patterns you're having and resolve those same patterns and relationships from the past. It's sometimes harder to deal with them in the present. It may be easier to deal with them in the past so that we are less hooked in the present. I also like the notion that we want to resist confronting. Let's see if we're back. Can someone mention whether I'm still on YouTube? You could say, yes, you can see me and hear me. That would be great. Back. Great. Thank you. We had a little bit of a connection problem there. It's all good now. I don't know what happened. Well, just technology happens. And I also want to mention on this broadcast, I mentioned that Renda Smith is going to be doing the live broadcast on Family Tree Life Coaches channel on YouTube next Tuesday. I believe it's at 8 o'clock. Renda, correct me if I'm wrong. And it is, oh, and I wrote down the title of it. Can you give me the title of it, Renda, so I can? I wrote down the title of it, and I was going to share with people what you were going to be talking about over on Family Tree Life Coaches, Brand Life Coaches channel. So if you can give me that title again. And Renda is R-I-N-D-A. And if you happen to see that title, let me know. I had a question. What is a healthy time frame after a breakup? And I think if you've had a breakup, of course, a lot of times, and as a marriage and family therapist in years past, that kind of the rule of thumb was a year kind of time. But it depends on the person, and it also depends on what you're going to. It depends on what you're going to do for that year. I mean, you could spend 5 years before you have another relationship and not go anywhere. Or you could spend 6 months and work really hard and be ready for a healthy relationship or, your next relationship. And it depends on how long the first relationship was. Was it a marriage of many years? Was it a dating relationship of 2 months? Well, then we may not need as much time to recover for a new relationship. But we definitely want to resolve the baggage of a previous relationship. We want to definitely resolve the baggage of any previous relationship so we can be more ready for a new relationship. Because we will take that baggage right into that next relationship, and we don't want to do that. Renda's topic is accepting what is. I would imagine that'd be around acceptance. So accepting what is. And that's next week on the 14th at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Family Tree Brand Life Coaches channel. She'll be live. Someone asked, you guys ask me hard questions. I just, it's not fair that you ask me these hard questions. You should be making donations for these questions. You're really making me think about these things. When someone makes a remark that that I find offensive, I think, or they find offensive, how do I decide when it's best to just detach and let it go, and when it's better to speak my truth? Well, I think the how important of a relationship is that to you? That's number one. If it's not all that important of a relationship, then I may not. I may want to just detach and let it go right on by. If it's a longer term relationship or a significant relationship, then I still may want to let it go on by. And oftentimes, I will choose my time to speak my truth. You can speak it right at the time if you can remain calm and self differentiated. If you can't, if you're going to be reactive speaking your truth, then I would talk about it at a later time when it's not going to be reactive, when I'm not going to be reactive. And I might say, hey, Mary, can I talk to you about that? A week ago when you said this, I'd like to talk to you about that a little bit. I was really uncomfortable with that comment that you made. And I felt it was felt very hurtful, and I'm just not sure that's something I felt comfortable with. Then I can stay calm as I'm dealing with that with the person. So if you can stay calm in the moment, then share your truth in the moment and stay calm and not cut offish and not avoidant and not reactive. If you can do that in the moment, then do it. But many of us have a hard time doing that in the moment. And so we might want to do it at a later time. Again, there's no urgency. We can slow the process down, and you can speak your truth. And if somebody doesn't want to hear your truth or doesn't care about your truth, doesn't care about you, then I might want to reevaluate this relationship. If they really don't care, then I may need to find some new relationships. I hope that helps. And there's a lot of good people interacting and discussing on here that maybe can even give you greater wisdom than I might be able to share with you. In fact, many of you probably could. How do you differentiate fantasy and unrealistic versus if you're not being given enough in the relationship or with your family? In other words, what's fantasy, what's unrealistic, and what's realistic? Well, I think that comes in you might find that out by evaluating the relationship. For example, well, let's say let me give you maybe an example would be of help. I have a relationship and all they ever do is criticize me. Is it a fantasy for me to expect them not to do that or want them to not do that? Is it unrealistic for me to want to do that? First of all, I might go talk to another friend. I might go talk to an objective party, a coach or a therapist. I might talk to them, a pastor or somebody who could advise me. Is this a realistic expectation? Because I didn't grow up with a norm or normal, so is this a realistic expectation? And get some advice about that. And if they go, well, no, it's really not unrealistic for you to think that someone wouldn't criticize you all the time. Oh, well then, I might want to be doing some differentiation in this respect. I don't want to be criticized all the time. And I don't think that's not my healthy view of a healthy relationship. And that and so we want to go back and learn, where did I learn that this might be acceptable for me to accept that in this relationship? I think also getting connected with yourself and your needs, your desires, your inner child, your inner adult, can help you with understanding fantasies, realistic goals, unrealistic goals. If you can become more realistic with yourself, you then will translate that into relationships. And so that may be a little help with that question. Um, the Another question is shutting down and withdrawing instead of reacting in defensiveness or anger just another form of passive aggressiveness? Shutting down. That's a complicated question because there's a lot of things going on in that question. Whoever shared that. I think it can be, maybe I should say, and maybe I think you're talking about if I want to slow things down or I need to just stop something or stop communicating, that sort of thing. Is that passive aggressive to do that? I'll take it as that kind of question. And is that just, I do think shutting down and withdrawing can be a form of defensiveness. It can be perceived as a form of defensiveness or passive aggressiveness, but if I'm doing it out of self-care, that I need to get myself together, that's not passive aggressiveness. If I'm working to get myself stabilized, that's not passive aggressiveness. If I'm doing it to leave you in the dust, then that's passive aggressiveness, and that might be more withdrawing and shutting down to get what I want. So I'm trying to tease out that question in the way I might answer that. But I think stopping the interaction can either be passive aggressive or it can be self-care. And I think that's appropriate to understand which are you doing. But I would guess anyone who's doing that to be manipulative or passive aggressive doesn't care whether they're passive aggressive or not, and doesn't care whether they don't care whether it's passive aggressive. I do care whether it's passive aggressive, but if I let's see here, shutting down withdrawing instead of reacting. But see, I guess when I hear the question, shutting down and withdrawing instead of reactive and defensiveness or anger, I think all of those could be aggressive. One could be passive aggressive and one could be aggressive. And I think that's true. All of those reactives. And I want to work to not shut down. I want to work to not withdraw. I want to work to not be reactive, and I want to work on not being defensive or angry. I want to work on all those things. And often I want to work on those in a way in which I see what are my buttons and what I've gotten from the past. And again, thank you for those who have push the donate button this evening. I hope this information has been a help to you this evening. I can tell I'm starting to wear down. And so I wanted to start to bring this to a close this evening. I want to tell you again that there's going to be a series on a playlist that I'm going to begin to have about Christianity and being a Christian codependent, Christianity and self-differentiation. That's going to be happening. I have a workshop on August 1st, not October, Saturday at 4 p.m. I'll be sending out information so you can sign up for that. Below you'll see some the store that we have on YouTube. I hope you'll join tonight the YouTube channel, and you'll see those prices down there, but they're very small. to help us continue to reach out with these videos. We also have a team here to help you with your message if you'd like to learn how to get it out on social media and web page. I really want you to step up in your support so that I can do these videos and spend hours planning for these. And I really want you to step up your support. I'm stepping up my support of you. You can step up your support of me. And if you have anyone who wants to sponsor the podcast, let me know. Oh, I know, there was one other thing that I do think I might be able to mention. But I think I may save that for the Power of Reversals videos that are coming up. And that's another way to be less reactive. Thank you all tonight for all of your compliments. Thank you for joining the YouTube membership. And if you push the donate button and it didn't work, then we can work on that if there were some problems. You can also donate via PayPal, just even using my jwlearning@hotmail.com. You can send a donation that way. You can also write to me and ask me how you can donate. So there's no problem with that. If you really want to donate, we'll work that out with you. But I really would like to ask my followers, and there are many who have benefited by what I do, to step up and to be supportive of what's going on here at Jerry Wise Relationship Systems. The join button is how you join the membership on YouTube, and the donate button during the live broadcast is how you donate on the live broadcast. It's a little,
It's called super chat.
you might push super chat, and then you can see the donate button. I was just told that you could push super chat, and you will find the donate button also on there. Well, we've talked about a number of things, and I hope it's been a help to you this evening. We're going to be doing another live in July, probably maybe the week after, but I think that might be close to my birthday. But we'll do another live in July, and we'll have a great topic to share and talk about. I do have wonderful followers, and I do have wonderful people who follow my work. And if you want to get in contact with us, you can just go to the website, send us an email if you have any questions. Again, I want to tell you that there's some videos coming up on reversals, which are fun, and playfulness and things like that, because many times many of us have been all too serious in our relationships. And as a recovering codependent, I've always been too serious about things, and it was so helpful for someone to help me be less serious and to learn things like it's probably hopeless, but it's not serious. And I really think that it can make a big difference if we can be more playful. Many of us who've grown up in dysfunctional families or adult children, we're not good at being playful. We're good at being over serious. And there'll be videos coming up on that as well. I was trying to think if there's another video that I was working on that was just recent that I think will be really exciting. Some new topics in that way. Because I'd like to stretch out. Oh, I know. Many of you ask about leadership and executive coaching, which I do with presidents of companies and things like that. And there's a leadership. I had started a book on leadership and self-differentiation. And there are some good things that I'd like to share with you and maybe have a playlist on leadership. Roberta Gilbert on her book, she talks about leadership. And because you can apply family systems and self-differentiation to that, to learning to lead and becoming more of a self as a leader. So, I want to thank you all for joining me tonight. I hope you'll look at the store down below. I hope you have a great evening, and thank you for joining me. And as always, be wise.